The other prisoners followed. One by one, doors that were never meant to break suddenly failed. Energy barriers sparked, control panels exploded, and humans spilled into the corridors like a rising flood. The guards opened fire. Blue bolts of plasma streaked through the air. A few humans fell, but the rest did not stop. They moved fast, faster than Krex thought possible. They charged with bare hands, ripping weapons from their enemies, striking with brutal force. A guard screamed as a human slammed him into the wall. Another fell as a prisoner seized his blaster and turned it against him. In seconds, the balance shifted. The silent cells were no longer a prison. They were a battlefield. Krex stumbled back, watching, in horror. The humans were not fighting like prisoners, they were fighting like soldiers. Every move was coordinated, every strike controlled. They covered each other, they signaled with hand gestures, they fought as one. "This isn't an escape," Krex whispered to himself. "This is a war." The warden stormed into the corridor, his scales glowing with rage. "Hold the line, crush them!" But the humans only roared back, their voices shaking the walls. They surged forward, overwhelming the guards. The scarred leader, still in chains, moved like a storm. He swung his cuffs as weapons, breaking jaws and shattering armor. Blood streaked his face, but his eyes never wavered. Every guard who tried to stop him fell. Finally, the humans reached the armory. Weapons, shields, and armor lay inside, meant for guards but now claimed by prisoners. They armed themselves with rifles, blades, and explosives. Their chants thundered louder. "Soul, soul, soul!" The prison fortress shook again as another blast from the human warships struck its shields. Alarms wailed. Systems flickered. Doors failed. The humans inside moved like fire through dry grass, unstoppable, spreading from corridor to corridor. Krex backed into a corner, his claws shaking. He had always believed the Council's stories, that humans were weak, desperate survivors, clinging to a dying world. But what he saw now was not weakness. It was strength. It was unity. It was fury. The humans were not breaking free to run. They were breaking free to fight. And as Krex looked into their eyes, he realized the truth that the galaxy had refused to believe. Humanity had never been conquered. They had only been waiting. The collapse of the fortress. The silent cells were no longer silent. They thundered with the sound of battle, blaster fire, shouts, the clash of metal on metal. Humans, once chained, now fought like wolves set free. The guards had been trained, armed, and prepared for riots. But this was not a riot. This was a war. Corridors filled with smoke. Explosions tore holes in the walls. Humans stormed forward, taking one section after another. They moved in squads, covering each other, signaling silently, just as soldiers on a battlefield would. Krex, the insectoid guard, could only stare in disbelief. His people had told him that humans were chaotic, disorganized, and weak. But what he saw now was terrifyingly clear. These were not prisoners. These were warriors who had been waiting for the right moment. The warden roared across the prison intercom, his voice echoing through the halls. "Hold your posts. Do not let the humans reach the command center. Reinforcements are coming, but..." His voice shook with fear. Even he knew the truth. No reinforcements would arrive in time. The fortress was falling. And then, the ground itself trembled. Heavy footsteps echoed through the corridors. Metal groaned under the weight. The smoke parted, and from the far end of the hall came a figure that froze even the humans for a moment. The alien warlord. He was massive, twice the size of any guard, his body covered in thick black armor that seemed to drink the light. A heavy blade glowing with energy rested in his claws. His eyes burned with hatred. The guards cheered in relief. "The warlord is here. He will crush them." But the humans only tightened their grips on their weapons. Some whispered to each other. Some smiled grimly. The scarred leader, his wrists still chained, stepped forward. His face was bloodied, his body bruised, but his voice carried like thunder. "This is our fortress now." The warlord's laugh shook the walls. "You think you can stand against me? You are nothing but vermin in chains," he charged. The battle that followed was chaos. The warlord's blade cut through walls, through metal, through anything in its path. Each swing sent shockwaves through the corridor. Guards shouted in triumph as humans fell before him, but the humans did not break. They swarmed him, striking from every angle. Blaster fire burned against his armor. Chains wrapped around his arms to slow him. Explosives rocked the ground beneath his feet. Still, he fought on, unstoppable, roaring with fury. Krex watched with wide eyes. He had never seen anything like it. The warlord was a force of nature, but the humans were something else entirely. They were not afraid to die. They fought with a fire that no other species had ever shown. For every human that fell, 2 more stepped forward. For every wound the warlord gave, the humans gave 10 in return. Finally, the scarred leader leapt onto the warlord's back, chains still hanging from his wrists. With a shout, he drove the broken links into the alien's neck. The warlord roared, staggering. Blaster fire struck again and again, burning through his armor. Explosives detonated at his feet. With one last cry, the humans pulled him down. The great warlord, the terror of the prison, the one no alien had ever dared to face, fell to the ground, broken. The guards froze in shock. Their champion was dead. Their walls were failing. Their fortress was collapsing. The scarred human stood over the warlord's body, chest heaving, eyes blazing. He raised the broken chains above his head, and the humans roared in triumph. Krex felt the sound shake his very soul. In that moment he understood. The silent cells had never been meant to contain these people. They had been a waiting ground. And now the waiting was over. The prison fortress shook again, this time not from the battle inside, but from the fire raining down outside. Human warships pounded the defenses, tearing the once mighty walls apart piece by piece. The silent cells were collapsing, and from the ruins, humanity was rising. The prisoners of Sol rise. The fortress of chains shook like thunder. Alien guards ran in panic. Walls cracked. Flames rose. Yet inside the burning halls the humans stood tall, their eyes shining with a fire stronger than any weapon. The galaxy once believed humans were weak prisoners, but in this moment everyone watching knew the truth. They were never truly prisoners at all. They were soldiers of Sol, waiting for the right time. For hours the prison had been a battlefield. Alien war machines filled the sky. But the humans kept fighting with bare hands, stolen weapons, and unbreakable spirit. Their leader, Captain Reese, stood in the center of the yard, his voice carrying over the screams. Chains do not hold us. Fear does not break us. Today, the galaxy learns what soul truly means. Every prisoner roared in answer. Their voices shook the prison gates. Even alien guards froze when they heard it. It was not the cry of captives. It was the cry of warriors. The alien warlord, Varkun, stepped forward. His armor was black, heavy as a mountain. His blade glowed red, humming with power. He towered over the humans, laughing. "You are insects," he said. "Trapped rats in a burning cage. No one will remember you." Captain Reese only smiled. His clothes were torn, his face bleeding, but his eyes were steady. "You are wrong. They will remember us. They will remember that even in chains, humans do not kneel." The fight began. The warlord swung his massive blade, tearing the ground apart. Humans scattered, dodging the crushing blows. But they did not run. They circled him, striking again and again. Blades cut his armor, stones cracked against his helmet. He roared in anger, smashing soldiers aside. Yet for every human that fell, 2 more rose. They fought not for escape, but for honor, for Earth, for Sul, for every fallen friend. Finally, Captain Reese charged. He leapt onto the warlord's arm, climbed to his shoulders, and drove a stolen plasma blade deep into the alien's chest. The warlord screamed. His glowing armor dimmed. He fell like a collapsing tower, shaking the prison with his final breath. The battlefield went silent. Smoke rose. Then slowly the humans raised their fists. The warlord was dead. The prison was theirs. Outside the walls, alien fleets watched in horror. Their ships were ready to fire, but none dared move. Every eye stared at the burning fortress. Every ear remembered the humans' battle cry. Whispers spread through the galaxy. If these are prisoners, What are their soldiers like? If chains cannot break them, what can? If this is Sol's spirit in captivity, what fury will come from Sol's armies? The truth was clear. The humans were not victims, they were a warning. As dawn rose, Captain Reese stood on the highest wall, looking out at the alien fleets. His voice carried through broken speakers, echoing into space. We are the prisoners of Sol. Today we rise. And this galaxy will never forget it. The prisoners raised the banners they had made from torn uniforms and broken steel. A sun, drawn in blood and ash, marked the symbol of Sol. And when the aliens saw it, none dared fire. Fear held them. Awe held them. For the first time in centuries, they understood what humans truly were. The fortress burned, but the humans walked free. Not broken, not weak, but stronger than ever. They were no longer prisoners. They were the flame of Sol carried into the galaxy. And far away, across countless stars, whispers already began in alien halls. Do not anger Earth. Do not chain Sol's children. Remember the prisoners of Sol, for they will rise again. The hidden signal. The escape attempt shook the entire prison. For the first time in history, one human had broken free from his cell. The guards had beaten him down in the end, chaining his hands and dragging him to isolation. But his actions had already changed everything. The silent cells were no longer silent. The humans inside began tapping on walls, on bars, on the floor. The rhythm spread through the corridors like a strange song. Tap, pause, tap, tap, pause, tap. The alien guards thought it was random noise. Some laughed. Some grew angry. But Krex, the insectoid guard, did not laugh. He listened. He realized the sounds were not random. They were a code, a message. One evening, Krex stood near the human block and watched them carefully. Dozens of prisoners tapped in perfect rhythm. Their eyes were sharp, their faces calm. He couldn't understand the meaning, but he could feel the truth. It was communication. Silent, hidden, powerful. Krex told the warden. They are planning something. I can hear it. They are speaking through the walls. The warden hissed, his reptilian tail striking the floor. Impossible. We jam every signal. No communication leaves this prison, but Krex shook his head. Maybe no signal leaves, but a signal may travel inside. The warden dismissed him with a growl. Yet Krex couldn't shake the feeling. That night, he returned to the human section. The scarred leader, the one who had broken free, sat in chains at the end of the corridor. Even beaten, even bloodied, his eyes still burned. When Krex passed by, the human gave him a faint smile. And then Krex noticed something. On the wall behind the human, scratched into the metal, were tiny marks. Circles, lines, patterns. At first, they looked meaningless. But when Krex stepped back, he saw it. A star map. The humans weren't just talking to each other. They were mapping something. The next morning, the prison's alarms rang again, not because of an escape, but because the main control systems were flickering. Screens glitched. Communications buzzed with strange interference. The technicians shouted in panic. Something is wrong with the signal towers. We are picking up unauthorized frequencies. The warden stormed in, furious. Track it. Find it now. But the technicians could not. The interference was coming from inside the prison, bouncing from wall to wall, hidden in the very structure of the building. And then Krex understood. The humans weren't only sending a code to each other. They were sending something out, a signal, a message, to Earth. That night, Krex walked his patrol slowly. The halls seemed tighter, the silence heavier than ever before. The tapping continued, soft, constant, never stopping. He passed the scarred, human again. Their eyes locked. For a long moment, neither moved. Then with his chained hands, the human pointed up at the ceiling, then tapped twice on the floor. Krex didn't understand the exact meaning, but he felt the weight of it. The humans were no longer waiting. They were calling for someone. Calling for something. By the next cycle, strange things began happening around the prison. Lights flickered more often. Energy shields glowed weak, like they were being drained. Doors jammed and refused to open. The guards blamed the old systems, but Krex knew better. The humans had turned the prison itself into their weapon. The silent cells were no longer a cage. They were an antenna. Krex whispered to himself in fear. They are reaching out. They are reaching their world. And far away across the cold stars, Earth was listening. The burning sky. The silent cells were no longer just a prison. They had become a signal tower, carrying hidden messages through walls, floors, and ceilings. The guards could not stop it. The technicians could not block it. And deep in the shadows, the humans kept tapping, scratching, and whispering in their secret rhythm. The galaxy believed Earth was weak, broken, scattered after the war. But the humans in the prison knew the truth. Earth was listening. Days passed. The warden grew restless. He doubled the guards, ordered heavier chains, and cut food rations for the humans. Yet nothing broke them. They still tapped. They still waited. Their eyes still carried fire. Krex, the insectoid guard, felt the change in the air. The prison did not feel safe anymore. The walls themselves seemed to tremble with hidden power. He told the warden again. Something is coming. They are not waiting for rescue. They are waiting for a signal back. The warden hissed in anger. Earth has no fleet. Earth has no power left. Even if they call, no one will come. But that night, the sky above the prison began to burn. At first, it was only a streak of light, then another and another. Guards on the watchtowers shouted in confusion. Meteors, falling meteors. But Krex looked closer. The lights did not fall. They slowed. They moved with purpose. They were ships. The alarms howled. The warden rushed to the control tower, scales flashing in panic. Identify them now! The technicians scanned, their voices trembling. Unknown fleet. Unknown signature. But their energy patterns. It matches human design. Silence. For the first time in centuries, true fear filled the prison. The humans had not been waiting for escape. They had been waiting for this. The prisoners pressed against the bars, their faces lit by the glowing sky above. Some smiled, some whispered, some raised their fists, and then, all together, they began to chant, not in shouts of rage, but in strong, steady voices. Soul, soul, soul. The warden shouted at the guards. Silence them. Silence them now. But the chant only grew louder. The silent cells shook with human voices echoing through every corridor. Krex felt his legs weaken. He looked up at the burning sky and whispered, They have come. Above the prison, the dark emptiness of space filled with shapes, warships, human warships, old, scarred, patched together, but alive. Their hulls glowed with fire as they descended. One of the younger guards gasped. This is impossible. The humans have no fleet. They were destroyed. Krex shook his head slowly. No, they were only hidden. And now, they return. The warden slammed his claws against the control desk. Raise the defense shields. Prepare. All weapons. Do not let them land. Energy fields lit up around the prison, glowing blue and white. Cannons turned skyward. The fortress shook as it prepared for war. But the humans inside the cells remained calm. Their leader, the scarred one, lifted his chained hands and tapped 3 times on the wall. The other prisoners answered. Tap, tap, tap. They knew what was about to happen. The guards panicked as the first human warship opened fire. A beam of white light ripped through the sky, slamming into the outer defenses. Explosions lit the darkness. Sirens wailed. The prison fortress, once thought unbreakable, groaned like a wounded beast. Inside the cells, the humans began to smile. Krex stood, frozen, his eyes wide. He had never seen such firepower, not from a world the council had called weak. His mandibles trembled as he whispered to himself, The galaxy lied to us. Earth was never weak. The sky kept burning. The humans kept chanting. and the prison that was meant to break them was about to fall. The revolt begins. The sky above the prison fortress burned with human warships. The walls shook with explosions as fire rained down from the stars. Sirens screamed in every corridor, lights flashed red, and alien guards rushed in panic. But inside the silent cells, the prisoners did not panic. They stood. For years they had waited in silence. For months they had spoken only through hidden taps and scratched maps. Now the signal had been answered. Earth had come. The scarred leader, still chained in heavy cuffs, raised his hands and tapped once more on the wall. Tap, tap, tap. Every human answered. Their voices rose, low and steady like a heartbeat. Saul, Saul, Saul. Krex, the insectoid guard, stood in the middle of the corridor, his legs trembling. He felt the air change. It was thick now, heavy with something he could not name. Not anger, not rage. Something worse. Something stronger. The guard shouted orders. Silence them, keep them locked down. Energy whips cracked against the bars, but the humans did not flinch. Their eyes burned with calm fire. And then it began. The first door cracked open. Not from outside, but from inside. A human pressed both hands against the energy shield. His skin burned, his arms shook, but he did not stop. With a roar, he pushed, and the shield flickered, then shattered. He stepped out. The silent cells. The galaxy had many prisons. Some were small, some were big, and some were hidden so deep in space that no one even remembered their names. But one prison was feared above all others. It was known simply as the silent cells. No songs came from those walls. No shouts, no noise, no laughter. The guard said the silence was heavy, like a dark cloud pressing down on everyone who walked inside. They joked that even sound itself was too afraid to enter. But deep in their hearts, they knew the truth. The silence came from the prisoners. Inside, those cells were humans. They were captured after battles between Earth and the Galactic Council. Many believed the humans would cry, scream, or beg like other species did. But they did not. Day after day, night after night, they stayed calm. They sat still, watching, waiting. The alien guards grew nervous. They whispered to each other when they thought no one was listening. These creatures, they don't act like prisoners. They don't look broken. They are waiting for something. But no one knew what the humans were waiting for. The prison itself was massive. Iron walls, energy shields, and watchtowers floated above endless dark corridors. It was built to hold the most dangerous beings in the galaxy, murderers, pirates, war criminals. But still, everyone said the humans were the most dangerous of all. Why? Because they were too quiet. One guard, a tall insectoid named Krex, often walked past the human cells. He felt their eyes following him through the bars. He hated it, the way they stared without fear. Not once had he seen them cry. Not once had he seen them fight each other. Instead, they spoke in low voices he could not understand, sometimes smiling as if they shared a secret. It was wrong. Prisoners should break. Prisoners should scream. These humans did not. One night, Krex asked the warden, "Why do we keep them here? They do nothing. They say nothing. They make no trouble." The warden, a gray-scaled reptilian, gave a cold smile. "That is why they frighten us. A prisoner who cries is weak. A prisoner who shouts has already lost. But a prisoner who waits is dangerous. These humans are waiting for something, perhaps for each other, perhaps for their planet, perhaps for war." Krex shivered. Still, life inside the silent cells continued. Guards walked their patrols. Energy shields hummed, and the humans waited. But on one particular day, something changed. A group of guards noticed one human drawing lines on the wall with a small piece of stone. It was nothing special, just scratches. But the scratches formed a pattern. Circles. Marks. A strange map. When the guards tried to erase it, the human only smiled. His calm eyes locked on theirs. The next day, another human was seen tapping on the bars. At first it seemed random, but Krex noticed the rhythm. Tap, pause, tap, tap, pause, tap. It was a code. And suddenly, the silence of the cells no longer felt empty. It felt alive. It felt like something was moving under the surface, waiting to break free. Krex told the warden again, "Something is happening. The humans are planning." The warden shook his head. "Impossible. This prison cannot be broken." But Krex was not so sure. That night, when the lights dimmed, Krex walked past the human section once more. And for the first time he heard a voice. A soft human voice, almost like a whisper. He could not understand the words, but he felt the meaning in his bones. It was not a prayer. It was not begging. It was a promise. And when Krex looked into the human's eyes, he understood. The silence was not weakness, it was strength. The humans were not broken, they were waiting, and whatever they were waiting for was coming soon. The galaxy thought the silent cells held the most dangerous prisoners, but they were wrong. The silent cells held the most dangerous army. The first escape. The silent cells had never been broken. For hundreds of years, criminals from across the stars were locked inside. Pirates, killers, traitors, none had escaped. The walls were too strong, the guards too many, the energy shields too perfect. But the humans were different. They did not shout. They did not fight the guards. They did not waste their strength on pointless struggles. They only waited. They watched. And in their silence, something was building. One evening, Krex, the insectoid guard, walked past the human cells again. His claws tapped nervously on the floor. He hated this duty. Every time he looked inside, the humans stared back at him with calm eyes. No fear, no anger. Just patience. But that night something caught his attention. A human, tall and scarred, stood at the bars. His hands were clasped together, his head lowered like he was praying. Krex slowed, suspicious. Prisoners prayed all the time. But this felt different. The human was whispering, his lips moving fast, and the other humans were listening. Their eyes shone in the dim light. And for the first time, Krex saw something like fire inside them. Before Krex could step closer, the human looked up. Their eyes met. Krex froze. That look, calm, sharp, unshaken, felt more dangerous than any weapon. Moments later, the alarm rang. A deafening sound filled the prison halls. Guards shouted, running from every direction. Energy shields flickered. And then came the voice of the warden, angry and sharp. "Cell Block 9. Breach. Cell Block 9. Contain at once." Krex's heart pounded. Cell Block 9. That was where the humans were kept. He raced down the corridors, his many legs scraping against the floor. Smoke drifted through the air. Sparks fell from the ceiling. When he arrived, what he saw made him stumble back. A human stood outside his cell. Not inside. Not behind the bars. Outside. The scarred one. The impossible had happened. Somehow he had broken through a shield no one could break. His hands bled, but his body stood tall, steady, like a soldier who had been waiting for this exact moment. Around him, guards pointed weapons, shouting threats. On the ground now." But the human only smiled. It was not a mad smile. It was not desperate. It was the smile of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. Krex froze, his claw gripping his weapon. He expected the human to attack, to charge, to fight like a beast. But instead, the human raised one hand and tapped the wall 3 times. Tap, tap, tap. From inside the cells, the sound echoed back. Tap, 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 hundreds of humans answering. The guards looked around in panic. "What is that?" one shouted. "They're communicating," another screamed. But it was too late. The scarred human moved. Faster than any prisoner had ever moved before. He knocked a guard's weapon away, spun, and used the butt of it to strike another in the chest. 3 guards dropped in seconds. It was like watching a predator unleashed. The others fired, energy bolts sparking against the walls. But the human, dodged, rolled, and struck again. His movements were sharp, controlled, almost like he had trained his entire life for this moment. Krex couldn't believe his eyes. This was no ordinary prisoner. This was a soldier, and he wasn't fighting to escape alone. Inside the cells, humans pressed against the bars, shouting words in their own language, their voices rising together. The silence of the silent cells was gone. Now there was sound, loud, powerful, united sound. The warden arrived with his elite guards, scales glittering in the dim light. He roared, "Stop him! Stop that human at once!" But the scarred one only stood tall, breathing heavy, blood dripping down his hands. He looked the warden in the eyes and spoke in a low, clear voice. Words Krex could not fully understand, but the meaning was clear enough. "We are not prisoners. We are the beginning." The warden growled, "Kill him!" Blasters fired. Lights flashed. Smoke filled the corridor. And yet, through it all, the human did not fall. He fought with impossible strength, as if every strike was powered by something greater than muscle, something deeper, something unbreakable. Finally, when the chaos settled, the scarred human raised his hand once more. He tapped the wall. Tap, tap, tap. The prison shook with the answer. Hundreds of hands striking metal, hundreds of voices rising. The silent cells were no longer silent. Krex stared in horror. This was not just an escape. This was the start of something far greater, something the galaxy was not ready for. The humans were moving, and once they began, nothing would stop them.